Dear friend, pull your chair a little closer to the fire, and let me tell you about a girl who thought she had nothing left to lose. This is a story about quiet courage, about dry cornbread shared in hunger, and about a truth that waited in the shadows until it could not stay hidden anymore. My grandmother used to say that the Lord sometimes sends blessings wrapped in trouble. Clara Danvers did not know that yet. She only knew she had been forgotten. There is a special kind of silence that falls when a person realizes no one is coming. Clara felt it the moment the train pulled away from Thornfield Station. The engine gave one last long whistle, then shrank into the wide Texas sky until it became nothing more than smoke against the horizon. The wooden platform creaked beneath her boots. Dust swirled around her skirt. The world felt too big. She stood alone with one battered suitcase at her feet and a folded letter clutched in her hand. The station master studied her over the rim of his spectacles. He was a thin man with tobacco-stained fingers and a face burned brown by the sun. "You say Mercer was supposed to meet you?" he asked. "Yes, sir," Clara answered. Her voice did not shake. She had learned long ago not to let it. He scratched his jaw and looked out toward the empty road. "Silas Mercer owns the Star Ranch, biggest spread in this territory, but I ain't seen him today." The words hit her harder than she expected. "He wrote that he would be here," she said quietly. "June 14th. Well, today's June 14th. Clara unfolded the letter once more. She knew every word by heart. "I am a man of few words, but I am honest. I will meet you at Thornfield Station on June 14th. 47 words. She had crossed half the country for 47 words. The station master shifted his weight. "You can wait for the next train. Comes through Thursday." Clara shook her head. "How far is Crestwood?" 10 miles west. Road's rough." "I'll walk." The man frowned. "There's a canyon path that cuts through Saddleback. Shorter, but I wouldn't." "Thank you kindly," she said, already lifting her suitcase. She stepped off the platform into the red dirt. The smell of sage filled the air. The sky stretched wide and endless above her, nothing like the crowded streets of St. Louis, where buildings leaned over one another and smoke hung thick in the air. Here, there was only open land and silence. She walked. The canyon swallowed sound. Rock walls rose on either side, wood warm from the sun. Sweat trickled down her spine beneath her faded blue dress. Her suitcase grew heavier with every mile. Inside it were 2 dresses, a wool shawl, and her mother's small leather journal filled with notes about healing plants. Everything she owned. What kind of man forgets to meet his bride? The thought tried to settle in her chest like a stone. She pushed it away. Maybe he was delayed. Maybe ranch work kept him. Maybe. An hour passed. The light began to soften. Then she saw the horse. It stood in the middle of the path, reins dragging in the dust. A tall chestnut with a white blaze on its forehead. Foam crusted its neck. Its sides heaved as if it had been running hard. Clara stopped. There was no rider. Her eyes moved slowly across the animal's flank. That was when she saw the blood. Dark stains on the saddle leather, more smeared along the horse's side. Her stomach tightened. She followed the disturbed dirt toward a pile of fresh fallen rocks near the canyon wall. The stones were jagged and pale where they had broken free, and beneath one heavy slab, she saw a hand. It was a man's hand. Large, calloused, still. Clara dropped her suitcase and scrambled forward. The rocks tore at her palms. Dust filled her nose. She climbed until she reached him. He lay half buried beneath stone, dark hair matted with blood, a deep cut across his forehead. His chest rose and fell in shallow breaths. Alive. "Mister," she whispered, "can you hear me?" No answer. His left leg was pinned under a slab too large for her to lift easily. Blood had dried along his temple. The sensible thing would have been to ride the horse to town for help. She knew that. A woman alone had no business staying in a canyon at dusk with an unconscious stranger. But the sun was sinking fast, and she could not walk away. Clara braced her shoulder against the stone. She pushed. It did not move. She dug her heels into the dirt and pushed again. Her arms trembled. Her breath came sharp and fast. The rock shifted slightly. "Hold on," she murmured. "Just hold on." She pushed with everything she had left inside her. The slab scraped sideways, just enough for his leg to slide free. Clara fell back onto her knees, gasping. The man's eyes fluttered open. They were gray, pale and sharp, even through pain. He tried to speak. Only a rasp came out. She hurried to the horse, grabbed the canteen, and returned. And supporting his head, she tipped a little water against his lips. He swallowed. "Cabin," he whispered. "Half-mile. Creek." Then his eyes rolled back, and he went still again. Clara looked at the fading light. The canyon was already filling with shadows. She could leave him, or she could try. It took all her strength to drag him free of the rocks. Getting him onto the horse felt near impossible. Twice, she nearly collapsed. But somehow she managed to lift, shove, and guide his weight across the saddle. She took the reins and began walking. The creek appeared as the last light slipped away. Beside it stood a small cabin leaning against the hillside. Its roof sagged slightly. No smoke rose from the chimney. She pushed the door open. The inside smelled of dust and old wood. A single cot stood near a stone fireplace. A small table. 2 chairs. Nothing more. It would have to do. She lit a candle. The small flame pushed back the dark just enough. Clara dragged him inside inch by inch and laid him on the cot. His skin felt hot beneath her hand. Fever was already rising. She fetched water from the creek and built a small fire. From her suitcase, she took her mother's journal. The pages were worn soft at the corners. Pressed flowers rested between them. Mugwort for wounds. Yarrow for fever. She stepped outside into the dark and gathered what she could find near the water's edge. The plants smelled sharp and green in her hands. Back inside, she crushed the leaves with a smooth stone. The scent filled the cabin. It smelled like home, like Sundays in a tiny St. Louis kitchen. She cleaned the wound carefully. He groaned, but did not wake fully. She wrapped his forehead with strips torn from her petticoat, bound his swollen ankle with crushed yarrow. Then she sat on the floor beside the cot and waited. The fever came hard in the night. He tossed and muttered. Once he grabbed her wrist with surprising strength. "Stay," he murmured. "I'm here," she whispered, though she did not know why she said it. The fire burned low. The wind outside brushed against the cabin walls. Clara fed the flames and pressed cool cloths to his forehead again and again. By dawn, the worst had passed. His breathing slowed. His skin cooled. When he finally opened his eyes in the gray morning light, she was dozing beside the cot. "Where am I?" he asked hoarsely. "In a cabin by the creek," she said. "You told me about it." He looked around at the fire, the bandages, the torn fabric. You did all this?" She did not answer. It was plain enough. His gaze lingered on her face. "Name's Eli," he said after a pause. Clara studied him. Something in the way he said it felt careful, measured. "I'm Clara," she replied. Silence settled between them. Not heavy, just watchful. She handed him a small piece of cornbread from her bag. It was stale and dry. One of her last pieces. He looked at it like it was something rare. "You eat," she said. "You need strength." He hesitated, then accepted it. As he ate, she wondered what kind of man he truly was. A ranch hand, perhaps, or a drifter. Not the wealthy rancher she had come west to marry. Outside, the creek moved steady and bright under the rising sun. Clara did not know that the man she had saved was the very man who had failed to meet her at the station. She did not know that the Star Ranch lay only miles away. And she did not know that the lie he had just spoken would change both their lives before the week was over. The next 3 days passed slow and careful, like someone walking across thin ice. Clara woke each morning before the sun and stepped outside to breathe the cool air rolling down from the hills. The creek ran clear beside the cabin, catching early light in silver flashes. Birds called from the cottonwood trees. It almost felt peaceful, but if she did not think too hard about what waited beyond the canyon. Inside, Eli watched her. He was stronger each day. The swelling in his ankle had gone down some. The cut on his forehead was closing clean, thanks to the herbs. He could sit up without swaying now. He could stand for a moment if he braced himself against the wall. But he still moved like a man carrying something heavy inside his chest. Clara rationed what little food she had left. 2 pieces of cornbread remained, a handful of dried apples. She split everything evenly, though her stomach stayed hollow. On the 4th morning, she handed him the larger piece again. "You keep doing that," he said, looking down at the bread in his palm. "Doing what?" "Giving me more." "You were under a rock 3 days ago," she answered simply. "You need it." He studied her face, searching for something, perhaps pity, perhaps calculation. He found neither. "You're not what I expected," he said. Clara gave a small, tired smile. "You don't know what you expected." He looked away at that. Later that afternoon, he tried walking to the door without her help. His jaw tightened as he put weight on his injured leg. Sweat beaded at his temples. "You're not ready," Clara said, moving quickly to steady him. "I can't lie here forever. That's not what you're doing. You're healing." He huffed softly at that word, as if healing were something weak men did. Still, he allowed her arm around his waist as he made it to the doorway. Outside, sunlight poured across the creek bank. The storm clouds of earlier days had passed. The land looked scrubbed clean. He stood there for a long moment, breathing in the air like a man who had almost lost it. "You were walking alone through that canyon," he said quietly. "Why?" "I was heading to Crestwood." "Why there?" She hesitated, then answered, "To meet someone." His shoulders stiffened. "A man?" he asked. "Yes." He nodded slowly, as if that confirmed something already forming in his mind. "He didn't show," she added. Eli's gaze shifted toward the water. "You sure?" "I waited until the train left." Silence stretched between them. "What kind of man leaves a woman alone at a station?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral. "The kind who changes his mind," Clara said. "Or the kind who forgets." She would not let her voice crack. Eli's hands tightened on the doorframe. For a brief second, something like pain crossed his face. Not physical pain, something deeper. What was his name?" he asked. "Mercer." He went very still. "Silas Mercer. Owns the Star Ranch." The name hung in the air like thunder before a storm. Eli forced a nod. "Heard of it." "Everyone has," Clara replied. "According to the station master." She turned her eyes toward him. "You ever met him?" His pause lasted just a little too long. "Seen him from a distance," he said at last. Something about that answer did not sit right. Clara could not say why. It was the way his eyes slid away from hers, the way his jaw set hard. But she let it pass. That night, a storm rolled in without warning. The sky darkened fast. Wind whipped through the canyon, rattling the cabin walls. Rain slammed against the roof in heavy sheets. Within minutes, water began leaking through cracks in the boards. Clara scrambled to move their few belongings. Eli limped across the floor, dragging the cot away from the worst of the dripping water. Another crack split open above the fireplace. Rain poured down the chimney and hissed against the dying embers. Mud seeped through the doorway. They worked side by side in silence. No questions, no complaints. When the storm grew fierce enough to shake the whole cabin, Clara felt fear settle in her bones. "If this place gives way," she started. "It won't," Eli said, though he did not sound certain. Lightning split the sky. Thunder boomed so loud it rattled her teeth. Outside, the horse screamed. Eli did not hesitate. He shoved the door open and stepped into the downpour. "Wait!" Clara called, but he was already gone. Rain soaked him in seconds. The ground had turned to slick mud. The horse reared and pulled against its tether, eyes white with panic. Clara stood at the doorway, heart pounding, watching him fight through the storm. His injured leg buckled once, but he did not let go of the reins. He spoke to the horse in low, steady tones, the kind a man used on animals he knew well. Finally, the animal stilled. When Eli returned inside, he was covered head to toe in mud. Water streamed from his hair. His breathing came heavy. For a moment, he just stood there. Clara handed him the last dry blanket. "Why would you risk your leg like that?" she demanded. He looked at her as if she had asked why he breathed. "Because she's mine," he said. The word hung between them. Mine. Not borrowed. Not hired. Mine. Clara's heart skipped. He seemed to realize what he had said. His eyes flickered, and he turned away quickly. The storm raged through the night. They huddled in the only dry corner left. The fire had gone out. The cabin smelled of wet wood and earth. Clara shivered beneath the thin blanket. After a long silence, Eli spoke into the darkness. "There's something I need to tell you." Her breath caught. "What?" He swallowed. She could hear it. "I haven't been honest." The cabin creaked under a fresh gust of wind. "About what?" she asked carefully. Before he could answer, thunder crashed overhead. The horse cried out again, and the moment shattered. By the time the storm passed in the early morning hours, whatever he had meant to confess had slipped back behind his guarded eyes. The cabin was half ruined. Mud coated the floor. Water pooled in corners. "We can't stay here," Eli said quietly, staring at the damage. Clara nodded. She knew it too. "Where will we go?" He turned to her fully then. "With me." The words were simple, firm. "Where is with you?" she asked. "You'll see." She hesitated only a second before agreeing. The ride out of the canyon was silent. Clara sat in front on the saddle. Eli sat behind her, one arm steady around her waist. His body was solid and warm against her back. The smell of leather and sun and something uniquely him filled her senses. The land opened wide as they left the canyon behind. Rolling grass stretched in every direction. Fences appeared in the distance. Then cattle. Dozens of them. Clara had never seen so much land in her life. A rider approached from the east, pushing a small herd toward a distant barn. He pulled up short when he saw them. His eyes widened. "Mr. Mercer!" the rider called, touching his hat. "We've been searching for you." Clara's blood turned cold. She twisted in the saddle to look at Eli. He did not look at her. "I'm fine," he said calmly. Had trouble in the canyon. The rider glanced at Clara with open curiosity, then back at Eli. Should I ride ahead and let Mr. Dawson know you're coming in, sir? Sir. Clara's fingers tightened on the saddle horn. Yes, Eli answered. The rider galloped off. Clara turned slowly. Mr. Mercer? She repeated. Eli's jaw clenched. That's what he called you. He exhaled slowly, like a man stepping toward the gallows. My name, he said quietly, is Silas Mercer. The world seemed to tilt. You're him, she whispered. Yes. You're the man who wrote the letters. Yes. And you let me sit in that cabin thinking you were some ranch hand named Eli? He swallowed. Yes. Hurt rose inside her so sharp it stole her breath. You watched me tell you everything, she said, her voice shaking now. About my mother, about the train, about being left at that station. I know. And you said nothing. He closed his eyes briefly. I wanted to know who you were without the ranch in the way. The gate of Star Ranch appeared ahead, massive oak posts, an iron star mounted high above. Her heart pounded as they rode through. Gentlemen removed their hats as they passed. Each one called him Sir. The house stood tall and white against the horizon. Wide porch, flower boxes, smoke rising from the chimney. It was everything she had imagined, and it felt like a lie. He dismounted first, then helped her down. You tested me, she said, standing on solid ground, but feeling anything but steady. Yes. Why? His voice came low and honest. Because the last woman who answered my advertisement stole from me and ran. Clara stared at him. So you decided to treat me like a thief before I had the chance to prove otherwise. Pain flashed across his face. I was wrong. She believed that part, but belief did not erase the hurt. Men gathered nearby, pretending not to listen. I saved your life, she said quietly. I know. And you lied to me every single day. He nodded once. I did. Silence fell heavy between them. Finally, he spoke again. I was riding to meet you when the rocks came down. I meant to be at that station. She searched his face for any sign of deceit. She found none. You should have told me the moment you woke up, she said. Yes. He did not argue. He did not defend himself. He simply stood there, waiting for whatever judgment she chose. Clara looked at the ranch, the land, the house that could have been hers from the start. Then she looked back at the man who had shared stale cornbread and fought a storm for his horse. I need time, she said at last. I'll wait, he replied without hesitation. And for the first time since she stepped off that train, Clara felt something stronger than anger. Choice. But Clara did not go inside the big house that first evening. Instead, she walked past it. Past the porch with its white rails. Past the red flowers blooming in neat wooden boxes. Past the wide front door that stood open like an invitation. She needed air. The ranch spread around her in golden waves. Cattle moved slowly across the grass. The sky stretched endless above, soft with late afternoon light. Behind her, she could hear boots on gravel. Silas did not try to walk beside her. He stayed a few steps back, giving her space. That, at least, was something. She stopped near a split-rail fence and rested her hands on the top board. The wood was warm from the sun. You had no right, she said quietly. I know. I crossed half the country believing you were an honest man. I am, he answered. She turned sharply at that. Look, honest men do not hide their names. He did not argue. He did not look away either. I was afraid, he said. The words were simple, unpolished, real, She studied him. This was no polished gentleman from the city, no smooth talker with shining boots. He stood before her dusty and tired, his ankle still stiff beneath him, his eyes carrying the weight of long years. "Afraid of what?" she asked. "Afraid of wanting something too much." That answer caught her off guard. He continued, voice low. "The last woman who answered my letters married me inside a month, smiled sweet, spoke soft. 6 weeks later, she ran off with $2,000 and half my trust." Clara's anger cooled just enough for understanding to slip in. So, you decided to test me?" "Yes." "You let me believe you were poor?" "Yes." "You let me share my last food with you?" His jaw tightened. That was the moment I knew I had done wrong. She felt that truth settle between them. "When you gave me half your cornbread," he said, "you didn't know I owned a single acre. You didn't ask what I could give you. You just gave." Silence stretched. "You looked at me like I mattered," he added. Her throat tightened. "And I do not matter now?" she asked. "You matter more than this land," he said without hesitation. "More than the cattle, more than the house." The wind moved through the grass around them. Clara turned back toward the ranch house. It stood solid and proud against the horizon. "You prepared a room for me," she said. Yes. Before you even knew who I was?" "Yes. And you still chose to lie." He took a slow breath. "I chose fear," he said, "and it nearly cost me everything." She let that sink in. A ranch hand approached from the barn, hat in hand. "Ma'am," he said respectfully, "Mrs. Patterson set a bath upstairs for you. Fresh water." Clara nodded politely. When the man left, she faced Silas again. "I will see the room," she said. "Nothing more." "That's fair." He did not try to follow her inside. Upstairs, the room waited. The quilt on the bed was stitched with care. A wash basin stood ready with warm water and clean soap. Dresses hung in the wardrobe in soft blues and creams. A rocking chair faced east to catch the sunrise. It was beautiful, and it hurt, because it could have been hers from the beginning. Clara washed the dust and mud from her skin. She combed her hair slowly, watching her reflection in the small mirror. Her mother's eyes stared back at her. Dark. Steady. "What do you want?" The question rose clear in her mind. Not money. Not cattle. Not even the house. She wanted to be chosen, honestly. Downstairs, she found Silas sitting alone at the long wooden table. His hat rested beside him. His hands were clasped together, knuckles white. He stood when she entered. "You look," he started, then stopped. "You look well." She sat across from him. "I did not come here for wealth," she said. "I know. I came because your letters sounded lonely." He swallowed. They were. "I came because you wrote that you would be good to me." "I meant that." "Did you mean it when you said you were honest?" He did not flinch this time. "Yes." "Then prove it." He waited. "No more tests," she continued. "No more hiding. No more deciding for me what I deserve to know." "You have my word," he said. "Your word cost me once already." Pain flickered in his eyes. "You're right," he admitted. "Then you have my actions, starting now." The ranch fell quiet outside as the sun dipped lower. "You said you would wait," she said. "I will. It may take weeks. I will wait. It may take months. I will wait." She searched his face for impatience, found none, only hope. "And if I choose to leave?" she asked softly. His jaw tightened. "I'll hitch a team myself and drive you wherever you wish to go." That answer surprised her. You would let me walk away? If you stayed only because you felt trapped, he said, then I would have lost you before we even began. The truth of that struck deep. She stood and walked toward the porch. He followed, but stopped short of touching her. The sky burned orange and pink across the horizon. The iron star above the gate caught the last light and glowed faintly. For 10 days, she said. You were just a wounded man in a broken cabin. Yes, and I was just a woman with nothing to offer but herbs and stale bread. He shook his head. You offered more than anyone ever has. She turned to face him fully. If I stay, it will not be because you own the largest ranch in this territory. I understand. It will be because the man in that cabin was real. He stepped closer, careful, slow. He was real, he said. More real than the man who hides behind fences and iron stars. She studied him for a long moment. The wind tugged at her hair. The scent of grass and evening filled the air. I am not forgiving you tonight, she said. I know. I am not promising marriage. I know. But I am willing, she continued carefully, to begin again, honestly. Something in his shoulders loosened. Not relief exactly. Something deeper. Beginning again, he repeated. Yes. No lies. No lies. He extended his hand, not as a ranch owner, not as a man making an offer, just as a man. She looked at it, then placed her hand in his. His grip was warm and steady. In that moment, no cattle mattered, no land, no house. Only 2 people standing on a porch at sunset, choosing to try. The first star appeared in the darkening sky. Clara glanced up at it. My mother used to say that the truest measure of a person shows when no one is watching, she said softly. Silas followed her gaze. I failed that measure once, he said. And I intend not to fail it again. She believed him. Not fully, not blindly, but enough to stay. For now, that was enough. They stood side by side as night settled over the Star Ranch. The wind moved gently across the grass. Somewhere in the barn, a horse shifted quietly. Clara Danvers had arrived in Texas as a forgotten bride. She had nearly walked away from the very man who wrote her 47 words. But in the end, it was not the ranch that kept her. It was the man who learned, too late and just in time, that the trust cannot be tested into existence. It must be given and earned, together.